So the access to 0 is the logs. Logs is undefined, probably due to, I'm not quite sure, but let's walk through the solution. So we've mentioned that your plugin should look something like this. So we're just going to copy that internal code here. So this install function will be invoked when we call view.useRules plugin. This essentially just calls this install function. And we apply the global mixing, which installs a created hook into our component. And we check for rules. And if the rules exist, let's copy over the usage here to see how it actually looks like. Right? So look at the shape of this rules object. And we'll notice that it's using keys that corresponding to the data property that we're trying to check and validate. So obviously, it should be able to contain more rules if you want to. So you need to iterate over them. So we'll use the familiar pattern again, object.keys, this.options.rules, for each rule. So for each rule, we have a validate function and a message, right? So we can just destruct it here, in fact. Validate, message. So our line is getting pretty long, but that should be fine. Missing a bracket here. Okay. So now we have validate. Validate and message, and obviously we also have key, right? In fact, what we get here is the key. I'm sorry, we get is the key, and the rule itself is this.options.rules key. Right? This is the actual rule. And I'll just ignore the, there's some syntax error here. Okay. All right. So now what we want to do is for each rule, we want to watch the corresponding property on the instance. Right? So we use this $watch key. If you've never used $watch before, just look it up in the API. This allows us to call a callback whenever this watch property changes. And it takes a callback, which takes a new value. We don't really care about the old value, so we'll just ignore it. So because we have the new value, what we need to do with the new value, the value has changed, right? So the new value, we want to do rule.validate new value. Notice that the validate takes the value and returns a boolean. All right? So result, our validation result. So if the result is not true, the validation has failed. And now we need to log the message. And this is pretty much it. So really, this exercise is partially about understanding the boilerplate of how to apply global functionality via a plugin. The other part is know that inside the plugin you can basically do anything. And it's really about knowing what APIs to use to achieve the end result. So a lot of times when you design a plugin, it's probably a good idea to start with the desired API. Think about what would be a good experience if you want others to use the plugin. And then you figure out how you can achieve that goal by going through the existing API surface of Vue, using these low-level primitives, assemble them together inside the plugin to provide some higher-level abstract functionality that can be reused and shared across multiple applications. So this is just a very, very simple example. In fact, in the afternoon, we're going to expand on this one and make it into something actually more useful. Okay. So that's plugins. Do people want to take a break or something? Let's take a 10-minute, like, just hard break. Okay. So we'll come back at 11:30, and then we'll talk about random functions. All right. And feel free to check out the solutions branch to look at the implementation. Oops.